In a quiet New Jersey suburb, the Caldwell brothers, Michael and David, lived a life of eerie perfection. On the surface, they were charming, polite, inseparable, but behind closed doors, a dark, twisted bond ruled every choice. Their lives revolved around one woman, Anna, whose presence both united and divided them. Secrets whispered through the walls, and every smile hid obsession. Would you dare step inside their world and witness the truth? If you enjoy these journeys into history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Anna had moved to the small New Jersey town just months before, hoping for a quiet life, far from the chaos of her past. But tranquility seemed impossible the day she walked into the local bookstore, its dusty shelves smelling of old paper and coffee. She reached for a worn copy of Wuthering Heights, her fingers brushing against another hand-strong, steady, deliberate. Sorry, she murmured, looking up. Michael Caldwell's eyes met hers. Piercing blue, unnervingly calm, yet somewhere in their depths, a flicker of calculation lingered. He smiled, polite but measured, the kind that made a stranger feel both welcomed and scrutinized at once. "You don't have to apologize," he said smoothly, stepping back to let her take the book. "I wasn't holding it long." "I'm Michael," Anna hesitated. His presence was magnetic, almost oppressive, but she felt a strange curiosity. "Anna?" she replied. They lingered in the quiet aisle, making small talk books, the weather, the quaintness of the town. Yet Michael's questions weren't casual. They probed just enough to unsettle her, revealing an awareness beyond mere politeness. He seemed to know things he shouldn't, and it made her uneasy. "Do you live around here?" he asked. "I just moved," she said, tucking the book under her arm. Trying to start fresh, Michael nodded, his smile tight but controlled. Fresh starts are rare. Most people bring their past with them, but sometimes, some people fit into unexpected places. Easier than others. Anna felt a shiver, a sense of being measured and weighed. There was something off, something she couldn't quite place. But at the same time, his calm intensity intrigued her. Before she could respond, a shadow moved behind him, subtle yet unmistakable. David Caldwell, Michael's younger brother, appeared at the edge of the aisle. Similar features, yet different in tone, less rigid, more observing, a quiet intensity that complemented his brother's controlled dominance. He watched Anna with the same piercing gaze Michael had offered, but there was no smile-only interest, calculating and cold. "You're Michael's friend?" Anna asked, curiosity mingling with unease. David's lips curved slightly. "Brother," he corrected softly. "I like to watch introductions. Observing is important." Anna felt tension coil in the air, something almost tangible, a strange energy binding the two men. Yet she couldn't look away. There was something mesmerizing, even dangerous, about the way they moved, the way they spoke like predators wrapped in civility. Michael glanced at David, a subtle nod passing between them, imperceptible to anyone but themselves. Anna didn't understand, but she sensed the weight of unspoken rules, a silent agreement that placed her squarely in the center. Before leaving, Michael handed Anna a card. "If you ever want to talk books, life, anything, call. We're friendly." His eyes held a glint that was impossible to ignore, a spark that hinted at something deeper, something forbidden. Anna pocketed the card, unaware of the chain of events she had just stepped into. The moment lingered in her mind long after she left the store. The unnerving calm, the subtle possessiveness, the silent bond of the brothers, who would soon shape her life in ways she could never have imagined. Weeks passed since that first encounter at the bookstore, yet Anna couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, studied, and quietly evaluated. She saw Michael more frequently, casually bumping into him at the cafe, the grocery store, and the library. David always seemed to be nearby, lurking on the periphery, never interfering but always present, his gaze uncomfortably steady. The invitations came subtly. Michael suggested a quiet dinner at his home to discuss a rare book. Anna hesitated but accepted, sensing both danger and curiosity in the offer. The house, a modest Victorian on a quiet street, appeared ordinary at first glance. But inside, subtle signs hinted at a life carefully curated, controlled everything in its place, nothing left to chance. Michael served tea with practiced precision. His calm demeanor contrasted with an intensity that made Anna's pulse quicken. Conversation flowed easily at first, but soon it took a turn she hadn't expected. "You know," Michael said, leaning forward slightly, "David and I, we share everything. Not just responsibilities, not just money, not just our lives, but in ways most people wouldn't understand. Not most people you'd meet casually." Anna froze. She tried to laugh it off, but Michael's eyes bored into hers, unrelenting. "I don't understand," she admitted. "That's natural," Michael said, voice low. "Few people ever do. Most would be frightened." Before Anna could respond, David emerged from the hallway. He smiled faintly, a shadow of amusement crossing his face. "Frightened is healthy," he said. "It keeps the mind sharp, the choices." Interesting. Anna noticed the subtle interplay, the nod, the glance, the unspoken coordination. She realized that this was more than two brothers with a strong bond. This was a system, a partnership that included her whether she wanted it or not. And yet, she was strangely drawn to it, curious and nervous all at once. The conversations became more intimate over time. Michael and David discussed boundaries, rules, and expectations with a calm authority that left Anna bewildered but oddly secure. There was a rhythm to it, an eerie harmony, and slowly she began to see her place within it. It wasn't coercion in the traditional sense. It was negotiation with invisible chains. Every word, every glance, every small act was measured. She began to realize that resistance was pointless. The brothers' bond was older, deeper, and more powerful than any fear she could muster. Yet in this strange equilibrium, there was care. Anna wasn't merely an object to be claimed. She was observed, appreciated, and strangely protected. The duality terrified her as much as it enthralled her. She could see glimpses of humanity in the brothers, a laugh, a shared memory, a look of genuine concern, but always tempered by an undercurrent of control. It was one evening, after dinner, when the unspoken became explicit. Michael's hand lightly touched hers, then David's. Their simultaneous gesture was deliberate, synchronized, almost ceremonial. Anna's breath caught in her throat. The realization hit. She was now a part of something permanent, something she could neither fully understand nor escape. They didn't speak much about love, not in the traditional sense. Their words focused on structure, trust, and limits. Yet in their own twisted way, it was a form of devotion, a devotion to each other, and now to her. She was no longer a visitor in their world. She had been woven into it, a thread in a tapestry as dark as it was intricate. As she left that night, card in hand and head spinning, Anna understood the truth. Her life had changed irrevocably. What had started as curiosity and attraction had grown into a reluctant surrender to an arrangement she could neither deny nor fully comprehend. She was in the heart of the Caldwell brothers' world, a world governed by obsession, secrecy, and a bond that refused to be broken. And somewhere deep down, a small, irrational part of her wondered, what if she wanted it to stay that way? Life with the Caldwell brothers settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and suffocating. Mornings began quietly, the house echoing with the soft clatter of dishes and the hum of the coffee machine. Michael read the newspaper at the kitchen table. David methodically prepared breakfast, and Anna moved between them, careful not to disturb the delicate balance. Their home was immaculate, a reflection of control and precision. Every book, every chair, every photograph had a place. Yet behind the polished surfaces, tension lingered. Anna learned to navigate unspoken rules, where to sit, when to speak, and how to respond to their subtle cues. A glance from one could change her entire day. A shared look between the brothers often left her questioning her own perceptions. Outside the house, appearances mattered. They shopped together at the local market, hosted dinners with neighbors, and attended community events as a seemingly normal trio. To outsiders, they were inseparable siblings and a close family friend, always polite, always poised. Yet every smile carried an undercurrent of something darker, an invisible tether that bound Anna to them both. Anna kept a journal, a secret outlet where she recorded thoughts she couldn't speak aloud. She wrote of the small joys, the warmth of Michael's hand when he placed it lightly on hers, the rare smiles David allowed her to see, but also of unease, jealousy, and fear. The brothers' control was subtle but omnipresent, an invisible web she couldn't untangle. Evenings brought a different kind of intimacy. Dinner conversations ranged from mundane topics, books, politics, town news to veiled tests of loyalty. One night, Michael casually mentioned a neighbor's engagement. Anna laughed, but the subtle glance exchanged between the brothers reminded her that every reaction was noted, every expression interpreted. David often disappeared into the study, but his presence was never far. He observed, recorded, and weighed every interaction. Anna sometimes felt his gaze, even when he wasn't looking directly at her. It was unnerving, but it also made her hyper-aware, sharpening her instincts. Small conflicts began to appear. Anna noticed subtle signs of jealousy. Michael would occasionally tighten his hold on her arm, while David's tone would carry a slightly sharper edge. The brothers themselves were careful never to break the surface calm, but the tension was palpable. She learned to navigate these micro-conflicts, adjusting her behavior to maintain the fragile equilibrium. Friends who visited the house remarked on its perfection. "You three always seemed so connected," one neighbor said casually. Anna forced a polite smile, careful not to betray the undercurrents of obsession and control that governed their lives. Even she sometimes wondered if the facade was stronger than reality, or if the house itself had absorbed the tension, holding it like a quiet witness. On weekends, the brothers would sometimes disappear together, leaving Anna to her own devices. She used the time to reflect, to write, and to test her boundaries, wondering how much influence she could exert in a world so meticulously controlled. The small victories, choosing a dinner menu, suggesting a book to read, felt like rebellions, tiny sparks against an otherwise unyielding order. Despite the cracks, there were moments of strange harmony. Laughter over a shared joke, a comforting touch during a stormy night, or the simple act of preparing breakfast together provided fleeting glimpses of normalcy. Yet Anna knew these moments were fragile, carefully orchestrated, and as fleeting as a shadow dot. As weeks turned into months, the rhythm of their lives continued, a delicate balance of control, secrecy, and subtle manipulation. Every day reinforced the truth. She was part of something larger than herself, a web of loyalty and obsession that would shape her existence, whether she fully understood it or wanted to. The quiet suburban rhythm of the Caldwell household began to fray the moment the outside world took notice. It started subtly, neighbors exchanging glances as the trio walked past, whispers behind closed doors, a raised eyebrow at a grocery store checkout. Nothing overt, but enough to make Anna's skin prickle with unease. Anna had hoped that her integration into the brothers' world could remain private, a personal secret tucked behind the closed doors of their immaculate home. But small cracks began to appear in the carefully constructed facade. A friend from the cafe lingered longer than necessary, commenting on how the brothers seemed very close, and how Anna always seemed so comfortable around both. Their tone was casual, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Michael and David were aware, of course. They noticed the way whispers traveled through town, the subtle stares in the street, and the questions that hovered like shadows over casual conversations. Michael's response was meticulous calm, a soft smile masking the intensity behind his eyes. David's approach was quieter, his presence alone enough to unsettle anyone who tried to pry too deeply. Yet the pressure wasn't purely external. Anna herself began to question the arrangement, testing the limits of what she could say, where she could go, and how she could assert herself without triggering the brothers' control. A simple conversation with a coworker about weekend plans became a minefield. She needed to gauge how much she could reveal, how much she could act freely, and when to retreat. One evening, Anna and Michael were walking through the town square, the night air heavy with humidity. A couple of familiar neighbors passed by, their eyes lingering a moment too long. "Do you too? Always spend time together like this?" One asked, a hint of curiosity and judgment in their voice. Michael's smile was effortless, almost charming, but his eyes flicked briefly toward Anna, a silent reminder of the unspoken rules. "We enjoy each other's company," he said smoothly. "Life is easier when you surround yourself with people you trust." David appeared from the shadows nearby, leaning casually against a lamppost, his arms crossed. The neighbors nodded politely and moved on, unaware that their questions had been carefully measured, and that any further curiosity would be met with subtle but unmistakable authority. Inside the house, the tension was palpable. Anna began to feel the push and pull of control. How much could she assert herself without disrupting the fragile balance? She experimented quietly choosing meals, suggesting outings, leaving small notes for David to find, but always under the watchful eyes of the brothers. Each act of independence was a test, and each response from the brothers was a reminder of the invisible boundaries. Even small social interactions became fraught with anxiety. Anna's coworkers noticed how she sometimes flinched at a glance, how she smiled nervously when discussing the brothers. Rumors started to swirl, subtle and insidious. Comments about closeness, peculiar family dynamics, and unusual living arrangements. It wasn't gossip yet, but the seeds had been planted, and Anna felt their weight pressing in from all sides. Yet within this pressure, a strange sense of empowerment emerged. Anna learned to navigate the scrutiny, finding ways to assert herself without fully breaking the rules. She realized that she could influence the brothers as much as they influenced her. A delicate game of psychological chess where every move had to be calculated, and every misstep had consequences. By the time the weekend arrived, Anna understood the truth. Outside pressure was inevitable, unavoidable. But it also revealed something she hadn't fully grasped before. She was no longer a passive participant. She had become an active player in the brothers' world, testing boundaries, navigating scrutiny, and quietly shaping the dynamics of a relationship that demanded both obedience and subtle cunning. The shadows of the town's whispers lingered at the edges of her mind, but Anna had learned to walk the line. For now. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when the first real threat of exposure appeared. Anna had gone to the local cafe to meet a friend she hadn't seen since moving to town. Michael had agreed to a brief errand, leaving David at home. Alone, Anna felt a flicker of freedom, a brief, tantalizing illusion that she could exist outside the brothers' constant gaze. Her friend, Claire, immediately noticed a subtle tension in Anna's posture. The careful way she spoke, the guarded glances toward the window where people passed. "Anna, are you okay? You seem different lately," Claire said, sipping her latte. Anna laughed lightly, but it was brittle. "I've just been busy. New job, new routines. You know." She tried to shake off the unease, but a faint prickle crawled down her spine. Something wasn't right. Then she saw him through the rain-smeared glass, standing across the street. Michael. He wasn't supposed to be there. His expression was calm, polite even, but his eyes locked on hers with unnerving intensity. A chill ran down her spine. She hadn't realized until this moment just how meticulously he monitored her life. Even from a distance, David appeared a few moments later, slipping quietly from the shadows behind Michael. Their coordinated presence, subtle yet undeniable, made her heart pound. Anna realized with stark clarity she had no true freedom. The brothers' influence extended beyond the walls of their house, beyond her perception, beyond reason. Later that evening, she returned home, drenched and shaken. The house seemed impossibly quiet, too quiet. Michael and David were waiting seated at the table with cups of tea, as if nothing had happened. But the subtle tension was electric, impossible to ignore. "You saw someone today," Michael said softly, his tone measured, almost casual, but carrying a weight that made Anna's chest tighten. I met a friend," Anna stammered. "Just for coffee. That's all." David's eyes never left hers. "Friends are complicated," he said, almost philosophically. "They ask questions, notice things. People are unpredictable." Anna felt cornered, the invisible walls of the brothers' control closing in. She wanted to assert herself, to claim a sliver of independence, but the weight of their gaze rendered her immobile. Every instinct screamed caution. Every glance reminded her of the stakes. One misstep could unravel the delicate balance that had defined her life for months. Over the next few days, subtle changes occurred. Michael became more meticulous in his routines, arranging small tasks in ways that emphasized his control. David shadowed her movements at home, always present but never interfering directly. The pressure was almost unbearable, a constant, unspoken reminder that her choices were never entirely her own. Anna realized that the outside world had become a threat, not just a curiosity. The whispered glances, the casual questions from neighbors, the unexpected encounters, they were all reminders of how fragile the arrangement truly was. It was a test, she understood now, a test of loyalty, compliance, and resilience. Yet, in the midst of this crisis, Anna discovered something surprising. She was beginning to understand the rules of the game. Small gestures could influence outcomes, minor acts could assert subtle authority, and the brothers' careful coordination, while overwhelming, had vulnerabilities she might exploit. For the first time, she felt the faint stirrings of agency. That night, lying awake as the rain hammered against the windows, Anna reflected on the events of the week. Fear and exhilaration twisted together. She had glimpsed the breadth of the brothers' control, and it was terrifying. But she had also glimpsed her own capacity to navigate, to survive, to push back, however subtly. The midpoint crisis had arrived, and with it, a stark revelation. Nothing would ever be the same. The stakes were higher, the dangers closer, and the web of obsession, loyalty, and control had tightened around her life like an unyielding vice. Anna was no longer merely a participant. She was a player, and the game had only just begun. The weeks after the midpoint crisis brought an intensification of the Caldwell brothers' presence in Anna's life. Every gesture, every word, and every glance carried layers of meaning she couldn't fully decode. The boundaries that once seemed manageable had blurred into a constant, suffocating awareness of being observed, measured, and subtly guided. Michael's obsession with control became more apparent in subtle ways. He would hover near Anna as she prepared meals, offering comments that seemed benign at first, but carried an undeniable weight. "You stir it too quickly," he would say softly, brushing his fingers against hers with a lightness that made her heart race. "The texture isn't right." Precision matters. David's approach was quieter, yet no less intense. He shadowed her movements in the house, lingering in doorways or appearing unexpectedly in hallways. He rarely spoke, but the sheer weight of his gaze pressed down. a silent warning that deviation from their expectations would not go unnoticed. The brothers' synchronized vigilance created an invisible web, a psychological architecture that left Anna both entranced and fearful. Anna began testing limits in small, calculated ways. She would leave a book on the wrong shelf, choose a different route for errands, or offer an opinion contrary to what she knew Michael and David preferred. Each act elicited a reaction, a tightened jaw, a subtle shift in posture, or a lingering glance. The brothers' responses were never overtly punitive, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. At the same time, moments of care persisted. Michael would brew her favorite tea, or David would leave a small note with a quote from a book he knew she loved. The duality was maddening. Affection intertwined with control, pleasure laced with fear. Anna found herself oscillating between comfort and dread, drawn deeper into the spiral of their world. Outside pressures continued to escalate. Rumors whispered through town like wind through dry leaves. Curious neighbors, persistent coworkers, and subtle inquiries from friends kept Anna on edge. Every casual encounter became a potential risk, a test of composure and discretion. The brothers' eyes seemed to follow her, whether literally or in memory, and she knew that any misstep could unravel the delicate equilibrium they had constructed. The tension between the brothers also began to surface. Subtle signs of jealousy or possessiveness flickered across their faces during shared meals or quiet evenings. Anna realized that while their devotion to each other was unbreakable, it was not immune to conflict when she was involved. She became a fulcrum, a catalyst in a delicate balance of loyalty and desire, always aware that her actions could tip the scale in unexpected ways. One stormy evening, the intensity reached a near breaking point. Rain pelted the windows as Michael and David both reached for her simultaneously, a synchronized gesture that should have been comforting, but felt like a binding chain. Anna's breath caught, her pulse hammering. The sensation of being claimed by both, of existing at the center of their obsession, was both intoxicating and terrifying. In the following days, Anna's dreams became restless. She dreamed of glass walls, of endless corridors where the brothers' eyes followed her every move, and of fleeting glimpses of freedom just out of reach. Each day, waking and living in their house, felt like navigating a labyrinth with no exit. She began to understand that the spiral was not just psychological, it was an inescapable pattern of influence, affection, and control. Yet within this darkness, Anna discovered an unexpected clarity. The more deeply she was drawn into the brothers' world, the more she learned to manipulate, influence, and predict their behaviors. Small acts of defiance became tests, subtle manipulations, and a way to assert her presence within the system. She realized that the spiral, while terrifying, also offered her a path to agency, albeit a perilous one. By the end of this phase, the household was a crucible of tension, obsession, and hidden power plays. The brothers' devotion, once a comforting constant, had become a double-edged sword, sharp and unpredictable. Anna understood, with both fear and fascination, that the spiral had no clear end, only a deepening descent into psychological entanglement, one that would soon reach a climax she could neither predict nor escape. The tension that had been building for months erupted one stormy evening. Rain battered the windows of the Caldwell house, lightning illuminating the room in sudden, harsh flashes. Anna sat at the dining table, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to focus on the meal before her. Michael and David moved around her, their presence suffocating yet magnetic, each subtle gesture laden with meaning. "I can't do this anymore," Anna said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration. The words hung in the air, sharp as glass. Michael froze mid-motion, a spoon suspended over his plate. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, confusion and fury mingling in their depths. Do you mean you're leaving? He asked slowly, controlled, almost measured, but the underlying tension betrayed him. David's gaze was colder, sharper. A dangerous glint had cut through the dim light of the dining room. Leaving? After everything? His tone was calm, but his jaw tightened, fingers curling slightly on the edge of the table. The undercurrent of threat was unmistakable. Anna took a deep breath, bracing herself. I can't be part of this anymore. The secrets, the control, the constant watching. It's too much. I need to be free. The room seemed to shrink around her. Michael's hand hovered over hers, almost like a plea, a desperate attempt to maintain equilibrium. Anna, please. You don't understand. This isn't just about us. It's about balance, about trust. Everything we've built together. Trust? Anna's laugh was bitter, trembling. You call this trust? You manipulate every moment, every gesture, every choice. I've had enough of living in your web. David rose slowly, his tall frame looming in the dim light. You misunderstand. Everything we've done for you too. This is how we function. We're not cruel, Anna. We're precise. You belong here. I don't belong anywhere like this. She snapped. I'm not yours to share. The storm outside seemed to echo the chaos within the house. Lightning flashed, illuminating every strained line on their faces, and thunder rolled through the walls like a warning. Anna stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Michael and David mirrored her movements simultaneously, closing the space around her, an unspoken tactic born of years of coordination. Anna. Michael's voice softened but remained firm. You can't just walk away from this. You know too much. You're part of it now. We all agreed. I didn't agree. She shouted, taking a step back. I never agreed to be trapped in your obsession. David's hand shot out, not to grab her, but to gesture toward the door. Then leave, he said flatly, his voice carrying a chilling finality. But understand nothing outside this house will be the same for you. You've been a part of this, and it changes everything. Anna hesitated, heart pounding. The gravity of their words pressed down on her. Freedom was within reach, yet the weight of what she had experienced, the obsession, the twisted devotion, the subtle care interwoven with control anchored her momentarily. Then, a sudden realization struck her. She had survived every manipulation, every subtle test, every invisible chain. The spiral had brought her to this moment, and now she could step out of it or fall completely under its pull. With trembling hands, she turned toward the door. Michael's eyes followed her, filled with a mixture of fear, longing, and disbelief. David's gaze burned, unreadable yet intense, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in power. She stepped into the hallway, rain-slicked light from the window, illuminating her path. Every footstep felt like a heartbeat, every breath a victory. The brothers remained behind her, standing in the shadows, the air between them thick with unspoken words and shattered expectations. The storm outside began to subside, leaving a quiet tension that lingered like smoke. Anna paused at the threshold, looking back once more. The house once a prison, a sanctuary, and a labyrinth all at once stood silent and imposing. She understood finally that while she had left the immediate control of the brothers, the impact of her time with them would remain in her mind and heart forever. The arrangement had collapsed, but the consequences would echo endlessly. Trust broken, bonds severed, and a haunting memory of a life enmeshed in obsession, control, and forbidden devotion. As she stepped outside into the damp, cool night, Anna breathed deeply. She was free for now. But the Caldwell brothers' world, their influence, and the shadows of their obsession would linger in ways she could never fully escape. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective, as though the town itself had absorbed the tension and released it with the storm. Anna walked slowly, feeling the weight of the Caldwell brothers' world pressing at the edges of her consciousness. She was free, yes, but freedom had a cost, and its imprint lingered deep within her. The following days were surreal. Anna returned to her routine, going to work, meeting friends, and performing the ordinary tasks of life. But every glance, every interaction, reminded her of the months she had spent under the brothers' watchful eyes. Ordinary life felt alien, almost hollow. The intensity, the obsession, the constant psychological game, none of it had left her entirely. She kept her journal more than ever now, recording memories that were impossible to forget. Michael's precise control, David's quiet intensity, the way they had orchestrated every moment of her life with careful precision. Some entries were laced with fear, others with a strange fascination she couldn't entirely explain. She had been part of a world unlike any other, one that had tested every boundary, every instinct, every moral compass she possessed. Occasionally, she caught herself glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see them, Michael and David, emerging from the shadows, their eyes following her every move. It was an instinct born of survival, a lingering trace of the psychological spiral she had endured. Even though she had left the house, even though she had reclaimed her independence, the memory of their presence remained, an invisible chain that refused to break entirely. Friends noticed the change in her demeanor. She was quieter, more guarded, and occasionally distant, lost in thoughts they could not reach. They asked questions, but she answered lightly, skillfully deflecting without revealing the truth. The secret of the Caldwell brothers, of their twisted devotion and her entanglement, became hers alone, a shadowed chapter of her life that she could carry, but could never fully share. Anna also began to reflect on the nature of control, obsession, and loyalty. She realized the brothers' world had been both horrifying and strangely seductive, a demonstration of how love, care, and manipulation could intertwine. It had challenged her sense of morality, forcing her to navigate a labyrinth of emotional complexity. She understood now that she had survived not only because of her courage, but because of her adaptability, her capacity to read, predict, and respond to the subtleties of human behavior. Over time, the immediate pain of the experience faded, replaced by a complicated mix of relief, residual fear, and lingering fascination. Anna never forgot the lessons she had learned, how power could manifest in subtle, pervasive ways, how devotion could twist into obsession, and how freedom could be both fragile and fiercely reclaimed. Yet even in her newfound independence, the Caldwell brothers' shadow lingered. Their lives continued, intertwined in ways she could never influence or escape. And she understood finally that while she had stepped away physically, the psychological imprint of their world, the tension, the control, the dark allure would remain a part of her forever. Anna stopped at the edge of a quiet park, looking at the horizon as the sun broke through scattered clouds. The world felt vast, open, and yet she knew that some part of her would always carry the mark of the twisted, obsessive world she had inhabited. It was a haunting, inescapable truth that some bonds, even when broken, leave traces that time cannot erase. She breathed deeply, stepping forward into the uncertain light of a new day, aware of her freedom, aware of her scars, and aware that life, like the shadows of the Caldwell brothers' obsession, was never truly simple.